3, 2, 1, go! Woo! Oh yeah, now.
Wow. The video has started, Larissa.
Yes.
I can't wait for the video is starting up soon, Larissa.
You're right, Claire.
I wish the OSMU Wiggles are playing hide and seek at the Wigglehouse.
Yeah. Right.
16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Coming, ready or not.
Huh? Hey, look. It's the Wiggles, Wiggledancing. Live in concert. A live in concert is like an ABC DVD video that tells people who you are.
Look at the characters. There's Anthony, Murray, Sam, Jeff, and Dorothy the dinosaur.
Those are the Wiggles characters.
So that means that whatever's inside the box belongs to the Wiggles. It looks like it's been there for a long time. I wonder what's inside.
Open it up, Oxley.
A disc.
Wow. Look how big it is.
I haven't seen a disc that big for ages.
Hang on, there's something written on the label. It says Anthony, Murray, Sam and Jeff when they were 15 years old.
15 years
old? That was 4 years ago.
It sure was.
We hardly ever watched videos then.
Well, that's because there weren't that many of them to watch. I mean, we didn't even have a TV.
That's right. We used to listen to the music player.
Hey, what are we waiting for? Let's go inside and watch it.
Yeah.
Yay.
Good
Good
idea.
idea.
Let's go.
Look, Claire and Larissa, we got a new DVD.
Wow. That's a cool DVD, Oxley.
Yeah. Come on, Orla, Opal, Oswald, Claire, and Larissa, let's watch a video right now.
Yay. That's a good idea,
Oxley.
Oxley.
Alright. Look, guys, watch this.
Yes, you're right, Oxley. The movie is starting right up.
Yes, Oswald.
I can't wait for the movie has been started. Opal, Oxley, Oswald, Claire, and Larissa.
Yeah. Right, Orla.
Me too.
Me 3.
Me 4.
And me 5.
1 hour and 22 minutes later.
Wow. That was a nice movie. That's cool.
Yes. That's a good movie, Oxley.
Yes.
Hey, I know. Let's sing a song about Do the Wiggle Groove.
Yes.
Good idea,
Claire.
Come on. Let's go. Let's all do the wiggle groove together. Here we go.
Uh-huh. Oh yeah. Here we go now. Woo, woo. Woo, woo. Uh-huh. Woo, woo. Yeah. Oh yeah. Woo. Woo.
We had a great time today. It's time for us to go now.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.